Welcome, everybody, to a conversation with Mr. Prawn. Mr. Prawn, how
Hello,
are you doing?
hello. I am doing excellent this evening. I just got out
Excellent.
of a therapy session and I'm feeling relieved.
That's lovely. We love therapy here on this channel as a avid therapy enjoyer myself. Very glad to hear
Hell
it. Very
yes.
glad to hear it. Well, I have a scrubland that you won from me not too long ago. It hasn't quite made it to you yet, but it will for sure by the end of the year. Congratulations on winning your this big tournament, this joking open. How was your event experience?
It was awesome. It was like last time. It was a really well run event. And it's always fun to play against like a different meta. Like a lot of the
Hmm.
people there were like typical webcam meta degenerates.
Right.
But having some like new faces, people that when there's actually like a nice prize, people are drawn out of the with the woodwork. So seeing like I got to play against like Black Lotus goblins as a list, which is kind of cool. I got to play against like just some newer pilot on our animator. No, just
Yeah.
it was a good time. Yeah, absolutely.
That's sweet. That's sweet. Well, obviously, of course, you won with your at this point pretty signature deck. Did you see you were mentioned on North 100 just I think today, in fact.
Today and not to really pat myself on the back too much, but last time as well.
Oh yeah, you're getting shouted out all the times. I've they've Wheeler's played two of my decks on North 100
Yeah,
and has shouted me out
Rigor
zero
got the shout out,
times.
right? Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what's up with that. But
You're
apparently
a
he'd rather
content
shout out
creator.
the prawn.
You're competing in the YouTube space.
Exactly, exactly. If you start up a YouTube channel, you'll stop getting the shout outs. That's how that goes, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's why I had to stop.
Exactly.
I was being blackballed.
Well, let's jump back a little bit. Let's take you back to your shrimp days when you were very young. I want to know, what's your story? What's your past? What got you into playing Magic the Gathering?
Uh, yeah. So I've been playing for what doesn't feel like a long time, and some boomers will shake their heads and say it's not a long time, but I have been playing for like a bit over a decade now. I started in 2013, I think. There's like the 2014 core set had just come out,
Hmm.
and me and my friends were like, you know, killing time outside of the movie theater waiting to like our show to start, and we popped in to London Drugs and saw Magic the Gathering like deck boxes, like the pre-cons,
Right.
and we're just kind of laughing at it, like because we're like, we're cool. I was really cool at 18,
Right. Of course. Of
before
course.
yeah, before time hit me like a truck, and then my one friend who was there said, actually, I used to play a game as a kid with my uncle, and it was a lot of fun. And we kind of on a whim, like half as a joke, half serious, bought the intro decks, and I've been like from my group of friends there. I think only maybe two of us still play at all. My other friend who plays, he's a bit more casual with it. But I've been like in love with the game ever since. I was the only one of us who ever actually like played standard. I played during cons block back when Magic was good.
Hmm. Back in the good old days.
Yeah, I saw like some. I can't remember what. I think it was an SCG that I played, like Villainous Wealth Nykthos. It
Oh
was
yeah.
like it was a Green Devotion deck that played Villainous Wealth to like draw a million cards. So it was like as a pretty casual player who was trying to get into like a competitive format, that was kind of my true love. And then eventually standard rotated, and I was still like a early college kid with not much money to spend on Magic the Gathering, so we shifted to Commander, and then I spent a long time in Commander. A little before COVID, I was into CDH,
Hmm.
and then I day two'd like an online CDH tournament, and then I tilted out of the format after I got politics out of the game by someone.
Right.
One player convinced another player to like let silence resolve. Like, oh, I'm gonna use silence just to damage Genghis Prawn's board state because he's a bit too far ahead right now. And then of course, you think it was like just wins. And I was like, come on,
Right.
so I tilted out of the format, and then I finally landed in Canlander because I'd been following North 100 for a couple of years, but just had never really like taken the dive. But since Magic was all online during COVID, I figured, well, if I'm going to be playing online anyway, like I can find like the niche format that I want to play.
Hmm.
And I started playing on the webcam discords. Rick had just started them up again, and I don't know, maybe 2022, early 2022, maybe late 2021, and I've been playing the format at the very least like weekly ever since.
I mean, that's sweet. That's a great experience, a great story. Where where'd you start when you played Canadian Highlander, did you start immediately on your now infamous Czech pile, or did you try something else out when you started out?
Started on Jund actually. Clown Tribal, I now call it. It was
Classic Boomer Jund.
yeah, like as someone who was like always intrigued, like I was always in like the periphery of like actual competitive Magic.
Hmm.
Like I was like, a guy who plays like Commander and drafts like once a month, but like watches some like YouTube modern gameplay or like watches the occasional GP. I was always like enamored with Modern Jund. Like it was just like it was the coolest deck. Like
Yeah.
it was $3,000 at one point. How could it not be cool?
Right.
So like finally getting to like play a format where I could cast Tarmogoyf and I could cast Bloodbraid Elf and I could cast Huntmaster of the Fells, which oh man, like time's hitting me there and like they were
You're
already
telling
kind of
me.
on the downswing when I was joining in. I got to like see them just kind of dip past the horizon of playability. But that was like the draw to me for Calendar was I was like, oh, I can try this Jund deck, and I had a lot of fun with it. It was reasonably well.
I think Jund is one of those sort of quintessential archetypes. I mean, I played Modern back in 2011, 2012, 2013, which was sort of when Jund was at its heyday.
Yeah.
And I remember playing against, fully foiled Jund decks, just being like,
Oh.
holy, I'm playing against somebody with a lot more financial resources than I have. And, got my teeth kicked in. I remember the period when people were splashing green in Affinity to play Tarmogoyf in it, because it was just, that was the thing to do, was play 4 copies of Tarmogoyf in every
Well, it's a
deck.
5/6. How do
Yeah,
you lose? In
exactly.
Affinity, especially.
So, no, that was, those were good times. And, I mean, Jund's been making a bit of a resurgence. You took down Jund in the finals. Crotash is doing well in the YJ meta with Jund, and I mean, you're basically playing Jund but with blue nowadays. So
Yeah, it's a wet Jund, I used to call it. Every now
exactly,
and then I still do just to piss people off. Uh,
moist
yeah, I like
Jund.
Crotash's list. Crotash is like taken Jund and made it his like total own thing. To be clear, not that I was saying it was mine before.
Right.
When I was playing Jund, it was like very low curve, like not aggro. I was selling like a tutor spread because I didn't want to like proxy mox him, so I was too proud. Uh, but like just like very 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 low curve deck, and then like the initiative came out, and I was like, Blood Tithe Harvester attacking and trading against 3 drops is like pretty good, until those 3 drops come with the initiative, and then it gets
Right.
really really bad. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just I had to figure out how do I beat the initiative, and then I figured it out, and it was Counterspell.
Counterspell,
And
really good at stopping the initiative from being introduced to the game.
yeah, so I've been a blue player for about I don't know, probably only a year and a half.
I feel like it's everybody eventually ends up in the blue pipeline, right? You start doing whatever it is you were doing before, and then you find blue, and you're like, well, but this is fun also.
This is
And
nice. Yeah.
so
Yeah, I tried.
what about
I'm sorry.
Magic sort of keeps you engaged and invested over time? You started many many years ago, 10 years ago, almost up 11 years ago now. Not to date you or anything. What's kept you around the game so long?
I love tinkering with decks. I'm not really a brewer. Every now and then, like I'll try and brew a deck. Like a while ago, I tried to brew like, and people played it before, but I was trying my own take on like Oath of Druids, like Scapeshift,
Hmm.
which is like you mill a bunch of cards and pick up like Lumra now is the obvious easy answer, but like something like that was kind of fun. But I really enjoy just like I arguing with people over the last 3 cards in a list. Like truly, that's what it is. It's like, you idiot! Fire of Ice is a garbage Magic card in 2024. It doesn't kill Frog. It's like, no, but it taps down Frog and draws a card. Like, but you should play Dress Down because Dress Down makes the Frog doesn't draw a card, and then you can bolt the Frog. And
Right.
like
It's the
those
tuning.
tiny edges. Like that's what I really enjoy because it gives you an excuse to argue, right? Call your friend an idiot.
The idiot EV is phenomenal when you're arguing about blue 4 color piles. Like there's so many
Oh
micro
yeah.
decisions, and I think that kind of those are the decks that really have those micro decisions make the most amount of impact. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. For your tournament last 2 weeks ago now, like 20 minutes before, I was looking at like the names people who'd signed up, and it was like, there's a lot of combo players here, and I panicked and I swapped my snow-covered island for a breeding pool and my fury for an assassin's trophy. 'Cause
And
I was like,
how'd
I
those
think this is,
changes
like,
work out for you?
it worked out pretty damn well for me actually. I think I got to trophy some big unkillable thing against Crotash in the finals. Like, yeah, like I just those little minutia. I was like, I want these tech cards. Like, not, well, to be, I'm not, I'm a pretty big four color blue defender, so tech cards may be a bit of an exaggeration because
Sure, sure.
the card quality is so good there is no tech cards anymore. But
It's
like
just
those
the
like those debatable like, all right, what's your 11th removal spell, right?
right.
Right now I was arguing with Jay Wyatt about Dismember versus Flame Slash as the last like removal spell in Czech. Like with but Flame Slash, but mental misstep, but sorcery speed, but the card that lives in my head rent free right now is Screaming Nemesis.
Oh yeah.
Like that card got printed, and I immediately started playing Snuff Out and Dismember again because I was like, I don't want to. Because usually before that, my plan in Czech or Grixis was to put a Goyf in front of whatever attacker they had. And
You're not putting a blocker in front of Screaming Nemesis.
Not doing that. That's a pretty embarrassing line.
Yeah.
Especially if that thing has a star plus one stat line.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, one of the pieces that I have never been good at or never really gotten a good sense of is sort of reading a meta, right? Even if I know that I'm going to be playing against a lot of combo, I still sort of generally struggle to tune my decks with that knowledge. Like, I don't really know how to evaluate cards based on that. I typically evaluate cards based off of how good they are for my specific game plan, which is probably why I'm a much better combo player than I am a blue mid-range player. I'm very good at figuring out what cards allow me to kill you, but I'm not very good at the whole like
the stopping,
the trade 1-for-1, grind you out with value plan.
Yeah, I think there's certainly like a kind of skill that has been worked on, I guess, like that I've kind of not like gone to a fine edge, but it's definitely not dull anymore.
Sure.
Of, like figuring out like what cards do I want to play, and also counter spells are like, that makes your life really easy. Like if I was playing Mardu and trying to figure out my interaction suite, that is a lot more difficult to figuring out a blue deck's interaction suite, where it's like counter spell, evasive action, mana leak, force of will. And it's like where you have these versatile universal answers.
Yeah. It's the same thing with hand attack, right? It's like
yes.
the flexibility of hand attack allows you to be a little bit less diligent in making sure you have the right set of interaction because it's relatively universal.
Yeah, you don't need as much like emergency buttons like to like slam, right? Like Assassin's Trophy is, I do love the card. I remember like my friend opening a foil across me at the pre-release when the card's going for like $90 Canadian and going like, dude, I gotta talk to you after the event. I do have a long-lasting love for Assassin's Trophy, but that card is an emergency button. You are never stoked to be casting that card unless it's like turn like 8. But like on turn 2, are you casting Assassin's Trophy? Not with a smile on your face.
Sure. It's flexible though, right? It gets everything.
It's flexibility, right? Like but the stuff like counterspell and hand attack lets you like have less of the Assassin's Trophy kind of desperation removal spells.
Totally. Well, after you picked up Jund, was there anything else you played along with before you ended up with Blue Jund, or was it pretty straight to I should put counterspells in my deck?
It went pretty much straight to blue. I did Jeskai first. I'd taken like a month-long tilt break at some point 2 years ago, I think. I was like, I'm getting too angry at this stupid game. So I took a month-long break. I left the server and I came back, and that was just when Impulse was starting his Jeskai tear.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came. He wasn't playing. I left. Then he came and started like winning every event. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna try and build Jeskai. That was like my first like blue deck back. Was building Jeskai, and I struggled with it a lot. I didn't like going from John the Jeskai, and even that at that point Jeskai was still very much a board based deck.
Mm-hmm.
Like not quite like the glory days of Brimaz, but I'm pretty sure his winning list that year for the upcoming Invitational was on like Archon of Emeria, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and like similar cards. So like it was like a much more board-based deck. So you think the skills would kind of transfer from Jund, but they did not. So I tilted off, went back to Jund, and then I think it was him and Jay Wyatt. Those two are like kind of the guys I talked to the most about deck building.
Mm-hmm.
That convinced me like just try Czech. All right, it's just play. You get to play Tarmogoyf. That's all you want to do apparently. You idiot. You like this sledgehammer of a magic card. Like like try Czech, and I did, and I definitely like fell in love with the deck, and that's been kind of the color combo I'm most interested in. Like at this point, like a blue black core with the green and green and red for like just kind of rounding out the card quality. I'm like,
so
yeah,
when
Uro
do
used to
your
terrify me. Like Uro
yeah,
used to
exactly.
terrify me on Jund. It's like, all right, how do I beat this, especially without being as aggressive as someone like Kordash's versions.
And now you're
Getting to play it
the now you're the
myself.
Euro player.
Yes, yes, and that card is a lot more fun when the 6/6 is closer to you than it is to your opponent.
Exactly. So, when into your sort of Czech experience did Modern Horizons 3 drop? Because I know a lot of players. I mean, I remember playing against you in tournaments with you on Czech. I'm pretty sure well before Modern Horizons 3 came out,
Yes,
and from there, I mean, the deck got quite a jolt of power from that.
the deck got juice. I'd probably been playing it for 8 months. My timing is kind of iffy. I'm in
Sure,
like
sure.
I blame COVID.
So fair,
uh,
so fair.
uh, everything goes wrong. I blame COVID. Yeah, I had probably 8 months on the deck of like it being like a consistent kind of deck, because there was like a
Hmm.
period where I like week to week was going back and forth between like Jeskai Black, Esper Red, Grixis White. Those
Right.
were all the same deck. Don't let anyone fool you. And Czech, alongside like I think I've played like Escape Shift list like once or twice on a
Sure.
whim, but probably 8 months of playing like consistent on Czech um, before MH3 came out and gave the deck a real shot in the arm.
So, did you find much tournament success before MH3?
On the Discord, I had a decent amount of tournament success.
Hmm.
I also hadn't done many tournaments. I
Yeah,
don't think like not any huge ones. At least in a way that I was like very focused. Like there was a Cosmic Games one. I believe we played at that one.
sure did.
Um, where at that time I was on like 5-color Jeskai. I was like Jeskai Blacks like on Minsc Boo and Oko and Renantex or something. It was like a
Right.
pretty gross pile. It wasn't that good. And then the other big tournament I did before that was the Vancouver Magic Fest or
Hmm.
face-to-face one. But that one was no proxy, so I ended up playing like Czech on.
Right.
I ended up playing like we have Czech at home, like we have Recall Home Czech,
Right.
where like I didn't even swap any card, didn't even like retune my deck. I was like, I'm gonna replace Mana Leak with Mana Drain, I'm gonna replace Wasteland with Strip Mine, I'm gonna replace Pillars of the Bog
Just
with Demonic Tutor. It was just like doing as little as I could to actually change the deck. Like was what I was doing. I was like, I don't want to have to retool the deck. I don't have to like think about the deck at all. I'll just do these like
just
make these
strict upgrades.
these strict upgrades. Like
Yep.
should I have found room for Wasteland as well as the Strip Mine? Probably.
But that's
Uh,
Wasteland 0 points to strip mines too. Your deck's better. It's all you need.
Yeah, exactly. Like the deck was like, yeah, it was just like no points check, but like it was no points check with 10 points essentially.
Right.
Like it was, which I did not find success. I went 3-3. I think if I topped it to Red Source for a Fury in the last round, I might have broken in on tiebreakers, but I didn't do too good. And there was a House of Cards event that I played Spearmint on. Yeah, I was very much waffling around this period, like 2022, 2023, between like what blue deck do I actually want to play. But again, I was no proxy tournament, so I was like on Soul Ring Spearmint with
Sure.
Omnath Locus of Creation. Which,
Those are that artifact does not cast that spell. I'll
No,
tell you that
it does
right
not.
now.
It pays for the commander tax, which is what I should be
True.
playing if I want to play that deck.
True. Absolutely.
But to get to your actual question, which was how much success was I having in tournaments before MH3? Not much. Definitely not as much as I have been recently, which I would be lying if I said Psychic Frog wasn't a factor. But I think I've also gotten pretty good at like honing in on both the deck and making the deck like as good as I can. Like really getting really grinding out those last like few slots.
I think, especially with decks like Jeskai and with Czech, where the edges are where you make up your win percentage, right? I remember in my conversation with Impulse, he was talking about sort of the knife's edge, right? you're never really winning by an insurmountable amount. Your opponent can always have a comeback if you don't play just right or don't sequence just right. And it's definitely clear watching you play over the past period of time that while Modern Horizons certainly helped the deck become better, it's not like you're getting any worse. You've been grinding the reps, you've been showing up to tournaments, and you're doing progressively better and better with them. And I would be lying if I said that Urza's Saga wasn't a great part of my time vault plan, but it's also you got to grind the reps, you got to do the work and do the labor to come in. And I sleeved up Czech the other day, and I hated it. It was miserable. I lost really badly. I got
It's a
demolished.
horrible deck. How do you beat Wasteland?
Dude, I don't. My opponent's like, I'm gonna cast a Broadside Bombardier. I'm like, cool. Guess I'll die. Like my Spell Pierce is rotting in my hand, and I'll lose the game. Like,
Yeah.
it became it gave me a lot more respect for the blue players when I sleeved up the deck and just 0-3 dropped. Like it was like, okay, all right, this is not child's play. There's some pretty big brains behind it, behind the grinding and behind the tuning.
Yeah, the floor isn't incredibly high. The floor is like medium. It's a 4-color blue heavy deck in an Eternal format.
Yeah.
So there's always gonna be like some kind of floor, but like the really good players like again like Impulse is like the blue player that's most easy to point to as like a very strong blue player.
Mm-hmm.
Like he makes the ceiling of Jeskai look so high.
Yeah, when my opponent casts Ancestral Recall, I feel like I've lost the game. And then I cast Ancestral Recall, and I was like, wow, I drew 2 lands and a Spell
Yeah,
Pierce.
2
I'm
lands
dead.
and a-
Like this doesn't do it. This guy doesn't do anything. What do you mean this
Roll
card
the
is
5
8
for
ones?
recall and then you just lose.
Right.
There was a game in your tournament where I like on the same turn I Treasure Cruise, Snapcaster, Treasure Cruise, and I just draw like nothing. It was like I think the first cruise drew like Snapcaster, a discard spell, and a land, and the second
Right.
one drew 2 lands and like another Spell Pierce or something. I was like, oh yeah, perfect. This is great. This is worth my entire graveyard and like 8 mana.
Yeah. Well, I think the deck is very good. I think that the tuning that has been done with it is phenomenal. Do you own a recall? You saving up for a recall? Is that something on the horizon for you to complete the deck?
I am saving for recall. Yeah, that is kind of my. That's my. I think you get like one totally stupid idiot purchase for
Sure.
Magic the Gathering. Like
Sure.
for me personally, like I think I'm going to only do like one of those,
Right.
and that is partially why I've settled on blue decks because the idea of like playing Jund and then buying one Moxen and then just having one Moxen for the rest of my life.
Right. There's still
Right?
2 more
Like-
Moxen to go. Like you're not there.
sounds miserable. So having if they put recall to 10, all right, then I'll always
You'll
have to
be
play
locked
if I buy
in.
it.
Like that's
But yeah.
it. That's
I am saving up for it. There is like a good living in the Calendar is a great community because it's so proxy friendly,
Mhm.
but living in where we live in like the Pacific Northwest,
yeah.
because there's a scene out here, there are plenty, and Wizards as a company is so close to it, there are like lots of stores that do big events and also are like I forget the term, but like certified, and so they don't do proxy
WPN.
events, which is a bummer. Yeah, like WPN like Plus or whatever.
Premium.
Yeah, premium. So having those, like in my little story of decks I've played and tournaments I've failed at, 3 of those were tournaments where there was no proxies allowed.
Right.
And I want to play this deck. I put a lot of time into this deck, too much time, some would say, and they'd be correct. I would like to be able to kind of give it the respect and the visibility that I think it deserves.
Well, it's certainly visible now, and your results are definitely telling in that regard. I remember when I picked up Time Vault, it was like Time Vault's not that expensive. It's only like $800, and I think I ended up finding one for like $650 or $700 or something like that. And that was a much more like I already owned a Gaia's Cradle. Like that's a much more stomachable amount. But $2,000 for a recall, like I've got nothing over $1,000, and that's it's a steep price. But I don't know. There's something satisfying about just sort of owning the cards. Like even if I lived in a fully proxy world, which oftentimes I do, I still enjoy to some extent owning the cards. Is some sort of satisfaction with that, at least for me.
Yeah, there is like some kind of like primitive like hunter gatherer like berry picking brain that goes like you got to collect it, right? Like there's like if Magic lost its collectability, like it would lose something intangible, but like it would lose something. The game would still be amazing.
Yeah.
I would never stop playing the game.
Of course.
Right? Like they could start printing cards on like printer paper, and I would still like play the game.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do enjoy having cards. Like I remember like buying my first reserve list card like in my 2014 or 15 or 16 or something. Whenever like I bought like a Taiga for $60.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is
Good
so
price.
cool. This is like this. It's a piece of history.
Yeah.
It's like this clean.
That feel
Clean
when you
Taiga.
assemble your duels for the first time. I don't know if you own your set, but that was like a moment for me where I was like, oh shit! When I finally got my Volk and got my full set of 10, I was like, oh, here we go. Now I'm playing with the big boys. Like,
Yeah. I finished my set in August. I think I won at the Cosmic Games. I won a Trop and then traded that back in and then bought the rest of Volcanic Island as well.
there you
It
go.
was like,
Well, now you've got an extra duel, and then you do what I do when you get extra duels, and you start giving them away at Magic tournaments. So
there it is. We can start laundering duels across back and forth across the Canadian border.
The amount of Magic cards I've moved. If there's any border guards listening, you got to stop right now. But the amount of Magic cards I've moved across the U.S.-Canada border has got to be in the tens of thousands of dollars. Yeah. It's ridiculous how much money I've moved across the border in Magic cards.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the metagame. So you jumped into the Joking Open, and you were like, "There's going to be I see all these combo players. There's going to be combo." How do you think the meta sort of is right now, both in sort of your local meta and the online meta? Talk to me a little bit about that.
It's certainly people call it blue hell.
Do you think it's blue hell?
I don't think it's blue hell. It's blue purgatory, maybe.
Sure. Okay. Still very blue heavy, but it's without the judgment.
It's not as. I think some of the doomsaying is a little bit overstated.
Sure.
I definitely think that, like, Czech, if we want to keep the points list kind of with the similar vibe, could probably eat like 2 more points without the world blowing up and me selling out. As long as Psychic Frog's not one of those points.
Right. Of course. Protect the prawn protecting the frog. Yeah. I see how it is.
But we have blue. I think blue is eternally going to be like one of the best things to be doing in Eternal Magic. Mm-hmm. And we do have the points list to kind of tweak that number and play with it a little bit. But blue is always going to be a great thing to be doing. We have combo, although most of it is combo that can kind of hang with blue by either like having him kind of like a very solid B plan, like Time Vault does famously, or Reanimator also has a pretty decent B plan now, with some of the printings they've got. The Abhorrent Oculus, of course, that's also a blue card, but it's also very good in Reanimator.
Yep.
Barrogoyf, of course, Psychic Frog, all of the cards that go out in Czech.
Right.
But like Reanimator,
just naming the Czech cards. Yeah. But Reanimator can play them, and they're good there too.
Like having the opportunity to like have that kind of switch, like not nearly as powerful as the switches in Legacy, where it's like, the blue-black Reanimator Frog deck is just disgusting there.
Right.
The Reanimator in this format has those hands that feel very similar to that. And then then there's like a couple like super fast decks that like Cyclops play as like a turbo ring deck.
I've been playing a lot of that recently.
Pretty powerful. Like I think leaning into like white with silences is like not a bad place to be.
Mm-hmm.
But then we're getting a lot less of kind of more. Honestly, I don't think any. I'm trying to think like what common decks are actually doing poorly. The artifact ones are fine. Like.
For sure.
At least on the Discord, Remy keeps killing people with Paradox Academy. Rigorn with Time Vault. In paper events, Reanimator's doing great. Storm is doesn't see much play, but I think that's more just a like player choice kind of thing. I think Storm is totally fine. Like maybe people talk about Lotus going down to make it better. I don't know if that's needed, but Storm is fine. I think Reanimator is like the best combo deck in my opinion right now.
Do you think Reanimator is better than Time Vault right now?
I do. I think it's really good.
I also think it's really good. That deck's really good.
They have 10 free points. The deck, none
of
the points in that deck matter. You could point just like throw a dartboard at the points list and they up a card, they wouldn't care. Um,
Well, they would care. They'd care a little bit. They just wouldn't care nearly as much.
they'd care. They'd be like,
Yeah.
all right, I just want
I'll pay a point
Reanimator.
for it, I
Like,
guess. Yeah.
point like Treasure Cruise or something. They'll add Mana Drain, and then they'll Mana Drain into Velgavoth or something disgusting. I don't know.
Right. It
Like,
doesn't, they
they'll
don't
get over
really
it,
care.
right? Yeah, like the Animator with Mana Drain actually sounds kind of sick. That's another sick pivot.
That's some cooking.
Like Lord of Change, nice counter your One Ring, Lord of Change. It's not unreasonable.
The fact that like there's so many ways you can take it, and really it doesn't matter that much because all of your important cards are unpointed, means that the deck can go many different ways, and it's just tuning the options, eh?
Yeah, and then like this is no surprise to anyone, but I think aggro does need more love in the current meta. I do think Strip to 1 is great. I do think Ren to 1 is great. I think both of those do a good part in like weakening the 4-color piles, like Czech especially. Because like now there's a really hard question. Like I've gone back and forth on it. I'm still not sure where I'll land, but if Forensics is worth it in Czech, because like I mean, it is red green. It is a deck that more than anything else
Right.
wants to cast blue and black cards on turns 1 and 2, and then like some red cards for both or whatever. But asking for green on turn 2 is kind of a pretty.
It's a little bit more of an ask.
It is a real ask. So I do think those point changes are good, but I think true aggro might need a shot in the arm. Like
How would you do that?
Like Crotash in his Jund deck, which is definitely like as aggro as mid range can be, in my opinion, or like Grim Hortons on Mardu tokens, which I'd say is like similar, maybe a little less aggressive, a bit more like engine-y. But like true like red deck wins, I think needs a bit more love. I think Gruul Monsters is better than people give it credit for right now. I know like there are Gruul Monsters players here who are saying, but what about Psychic Frog? But what about Barogoyf? I think that deck can like that deck will still draw Mana Crypt sometimes. Like you'll and I will lose.
Mana Crypt's a good. That's a really good Magic card. That kills people.
I will lose to Mana Crypt. Like that deck will still absolutely like kick teeth.
Yeah. Land Crypt Lelia. Okay.
Yeah, like literal red deck wins. I want to see more of that. I haven't played against it in a long time, and I'm genuinely not sure if that's because it's dead or because it's like it's a really hard deck to play. It gets harder, especially when like there are cards like Barogoy for Psychic Frog that ask you like really difficult questions as a burn player. Like, do I need to? Can I cheese combat in some way to get through this, or do I need to answer them now? If I answer them now, am I like 2-for-1ing myself or whatever? But also like even before MH3, I wasn't seeing much red deck wins. Like Wonky Wombat in the Discord like mentions it every now and then, but he doesn't play much on like the online scene, and I don't think I ever see results from his scene. But I think he's someone who plays it and believes that it's fine right now. I think to a certain extent, the easiest thing to do in the format right now is play like 3 colors, and so there's not much incentive for people to play 1 or 2 color decks. And I'm not sure if that's something that needs like critically to be fixed. I don't know if that's saying it's broken, but it is certainly something that I think is maybe a little bit of a bummer, perhaps. Like,
yeah,
I would like to see like someone play Jack Pop against me again. I mean that card's never making me come back. That's a joke.
I mean, I would love to see it. It's not going to happen. I'd love to see it though. I'd be very thankful for somebody to be like Mountain Jackalpup pass.
Yeah, this was
like,
the last.
Fuck yeah, bro.
The last bastion for Jackalpup was Calander. Unless is it in pre-modern? I don't know what pre-modern looks like.
I'm sure it's legal in pre-modern, but I don't think it's. I mean, I wouldn't know. I don't play that format.
Okay. No, but yeah, like I'd like to see a bit more aggro. I think Strip to 1 is a good start to that in more than one way. Like, Czech does lose to Wasteland. Like, I have kept many a hand that just will crumble to a single Wasteland.
Yeah.
So having more of them available, or more of them running around, will probably be, in the long term at least, a good change.
Yeah. I think that's one of the other things that Surveil Lands did, which I think is generally positive, is that it took people off of Triomes because they're better, which also gives you a little bit more incentive to be in 3 colors. And I think that that thing you identified about Ren and 6 being sort of a double splash in a blue-black core like that makes that pointing kind of elegant in a way, and that it gives you some legitimate pause to go, well, how badly do I really want to be 4 colors when I could, in theory, just make my mana better and go back down to 3?
Yeah.
And I think that, like, in modern design, we have pretty good tools to address 4 and 5 color. Like, let's make it so you want to play 3 colors, but there's not a lot of reasons to push down below 3 outside of, like, making Mana Crypt and Soul Ring better. And do you think Mana Crypt to 4, is that what we're getting from this? Like, is that the way that we bring back aggro?
Like, I think it would be good for, like, aggro's numbers in the meta, but I don't... No game with Mana Crypt is fun. I'm sorry.
Right. So, like...
I know I play Recall, and, like, play Volcanic Island up on your upkeep, cast Recall. That's not a fun play pattern for you either, but... Mana Crypt, like, anything, is just, like... It's horrible magic. I'm sorry.
Land Mana Crypt, any spell.
Yeah,
and then the game's less fun than it was before.
Yeah, like... I am a fast mana hater. I do think fast mana, where it's at is reasonable, like, because it does incentivize decks like that punish blue decks to exist, but also, man, when someone goes like mox anything, just like, come on. Why don't we just, like, shuffle up, show our 7, and go to game 2? Like,
well, that's the benefit of playing the fast mana, is you get to high roll more often in a format that's already kind of variance heavy.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that, like, those decks are, like, no skill or anything. Absolutely not. Like, I have played against, like, very good Mox players, and I've played against weaker Mox players, and you feel that difference. You know,
absolutely.
Both in, like, terms of mulligan decisions where they mulch those hands that just can, like, cream you, or when they, you know, just have interesting, like, lines that you wouldn't think of, curving out in certain ways to win. So yeah, I'm not sure. To be clear, Moxen and Mana Crypt players, this is not a call out.
It's not an attack.
All right, I'm a Recall player. I'm also, you know, a bad guy for that. So,
we're all that's the thing. All Canadian Highlander players are bullies. Really, we just have different ways that we like to bully each other.
Exactly. Yeah, I think like Recall is kind of like cyberbullying. You know, we take our time. We get cyberbullying online. Get in your head. Take our time doing it. Really savor it.
Draw it out for sure.
That's do it from a distance. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Really savor that pain as you ever so slowly drown your opponent in card advantage.
Yeah, like, and then Mox and Mana Crypt is like the classic, like, bully, like, punch you in the face,
slam you against the locker, take your money and then walk away. It's over. It's over quick.
Yeah.
So, what type of decks do you think are, we've talked a lot about aggro decks sort of being a little bit underrepresented in the meta right now. What type of decks do you think might be overrepresented? Are there decks that people are playing too much of that you think don't really belong, or, decks that maybe are seeing more play than they deserve?
I think there will be some kind of swing around. For combo especially. I have been banging the Reanimator Too Good bell for, like, a little bit. Not a long time, but a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think, like, a lot of players do drift to Reanimator because Reanimator is fun.
It's one of the least combo-y combo decks, I think.
Yeah. And, like, you have time to play it most of the time, and you do get to play, like, ridiculous Old Heart foils of, like, these 8-drops and 9-drop, like, cards, which is, like, it's cool to do, right? When I play, like, I don't know, Ragavan and attack you 10 times, like, that's not as exciting as,
True.
Valgavoth, Destroyer of Moth, or whatever.
Trench Gorge or Trench George.
Yeah, Trench George, yeah, right? That's more fun there. I think the meta will adjust at some point to add more Grave Hate, both for blue decks and for Reanimator, and at that point Reanimator might, like, get a bit of hate, but I don't think, at least in terms of, like, a deck seeing too much play, I don't think, because am I right in that what you're asking me is, like, there's not enough aggro, what would you kind of want to replace aggro with? What would you want to, like, dial down to kind of fill that space in with aggro?
I mean, that's certainly a reasonable question to ask. I think my question was more along the lines of, do you think there are decks that people are playing or showing up with that are not that good, that people are showing up with and they're wrong to do so? But certainly, the question of what decks do we need to down tune to make space for aggro is certainly an interesting question. I'd love to get your thoughts on. I agree with you that Reanimator is probably a little overtuned at this point. I think Czech is probably a little overtuned. I think Time Vault has been overtuned for a year or more, and they still have not done anything about it. I'm still playing Danapad for free. But
Yeah, I think you've got to name those three. I think like four color pile does need. I think four color pile should be like for like the true degenerates, right? Like it's called like Czech pile in Legacy. It's called pile because it is just like it is a pile of the best cards. Like you need to be a bit of a madman to play it, right? Because I'm pretty sure at that time my Legacy history is not like fully up to snuff, but I think like Grixis Delver was maybe the best deck at the format at that point. I could be wrong.
I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
Call me out. But like I think four color pile should be like less common than three color blue decks. Like just in terms of like
sure.
I think for format health, for like, and also for having like giving other decks like room to kind of like sneak through. Like for example, like Grixis is a deck like every now and then, I said this somewhere else in Discord, like every now and then I like start building Grixis because at this point in Czech I'm more or less Grixis green. Like I've cut down to like 4 or 5 green cards. I start building Grixis and then I look at a Braid and then I just stop playing Grixis. I stop brewing it.
Right.
Because like I need like Grixis is low on like the non-creature permanent removal. Like artifacts it's fine, right? But
sure.
Against like enchantments, for example, it's just like it can't do that. And I think having more 3-color decks that do have those kind of weaknesses, like, is probably a healthy thing. Like even like Jeskai, for example, is a deck that like it has very few weaknesses. It has counter spells. It has the best removal. It also has a density removal between white and red. But against, I'm thinking other like certain decks like. Against either like a Storm deck or a Reanimator deck, it is missing Grave Hate, and it's missing Discard. And while Jeskai absolutely can have like a great win rate against either of those decks, especially if the player tunes it towards it, it is going to be in like just on its own by not having black going to be a little bit worse against those decks.
Absolutely,
a little bit worse, opposed to Grixis, which loses the nice white removal, which white removal is very versatile, right? Like. People talk about Assassin's Trophy and Erupt Decay, like, oh, that's why Czech is so good, they can answer anything. But Jeskai gets March of Vitality Light, it gets Prismatic Ending. If they want to add, like, one Triome, they get to play Leyline Binding. There's probably another, like, versatile removal spell that I'm missing, but, like, Jeskai has, like, very versatile removal. Like, against, like, I was thinking to myself a while ago, against Time Vault specifically, I was like, you know, Czech's good against Time Vault because it has, you know, Erupt Decay, it has a trophy. And then I was looking at a Jeskai list, and I was like, oh, hold on, never mind. Like, it's about the exact same, but also they can march the Saga. Like, that sounds way better. But anyway, like, Grixis will be better against, like, graveyard decks and, like Storm, like, combo decks, because it has Discard, right? Discard's not the end-all, be-all.
I mean,
but
it's
it is,
good,
like,
though.
it is absolutely great to have. Like, a good Jeskai palette can beat those decks anyway. But, like, in general, having 3-color decks lets a couple more combo decks sneak in to the meta in ways they don't get to otherwise. Right now, when in kind of the 4-color world we're living in, like, I don't have to choose.
Right? Yeah, you get to play the best version of everything.
Exactly, and I don't have to choose because there's not enough aggro right now. And whether aggro is not good enough because of me or because of combo, like the way combo's built right now, I'm not sure what's keeping aggro down more, if it's combo or if it's 4-color blue. I think to a certain, like, I think it's both. Maybe it's a bit more 4-color blue between, like, you know, Baragorth, Psychic Frog are both insane cards. Like, Psychic Frog is just like a good Tarmogoyf.
Right.
Like,
it's a Tarmogoyf that draws cards.
Which does hurt to say.
I think with aggro the problem is, I mean, obviously it's twofold, right? People's perception of aggro is relatively low right now, which is part of why they don't bring it. And I think it's not as interesting to play right now, which is part of why people don't bring it. And if people aren't bringing it, they're not going to get better at playing it, and people don't have to respect it, so they further tune towards beating the other decks that people are playing. And so you end up in the kind of blue purgatory you were talking about earlier, where if nobody's bringing aggro, nobody has to tune for aggro, which means everybody tunes for blue mid-range, and you end up in sort of a sludgy sort of mid-range slam fest. I think.
Yeah, no, yeah. Thank you for saying that. I wasn't brave enough to say it, but yeah, I do think to a certain extent, there is some kind of self-fulfilling prophecy with aggro plays right now, like because I know YJ, for example, has Thomas Simmons. He like won the YJ Invitational last year, I believe.
Oh yeah.
Like on 4-color Jeskai, like very very competent, very powerful, like very great blue pilot, like great mind for the game. But that format is still dominated by aggro. And like,
yeah,
right, like, and so like there's definitely something to the fact that like, are those decks like 4-color or 3-color, like Jund aggro and Mardu aggro? Yes, but I think once those decks kind of pop up more, if we see more 3-color aggro decks in like the other metas, then other decks have to adapt, and then maybe there's some room for some low-color aggro decks to sneak in.
I also think it's going to be a function of what the best players in your meta tend to be doing. Like if you have to play against, the same person every week, and that person is always playing lightning quick combo, you're not particularly incentivized to sleeve up more aggro. If you're always playing against aggro decks, I think the Iowa meta tends to be somewhat. They're a little bit more aggressive than some of the other metas.
They used to be just like a hilarious like pile of Moxen, is my understanding.
Oh, yeah.
But they've started
some blues crept in.
Yeah, some blues crept in. I think someone brought Time Volt and like just beat up people, and
that's
switch things
that's
up.
That's the problem is with decks like Time Vault, and I say this as like the Time Vault guy. Like that was my shtick for a very long time. Time Vault does not worry that much about aggro, because it's still tuned to beat blue decks. Like it does do so much so effectively at such a it's too good at so many things. Like it's very hard to like if you don't have silver bullets to beat artifacts, you don't really have a good matchup versus Time Vault. And so that's why blue decks teched into Brotherhood's End and cards like that. Dress down stocks go way up when you've got constructs that you're facing down. But when a deck that has such a powerful fast combo, like that deck Goldfish is at turn 4, which is stupid fast. Like the fastest deck that I've ever Goldfished was Turbo Ring, like turn 3.2. Breach Storm is like turn 3.5. Flash is like turn 3.7. Time Vault's turn 4. Like it's
and
barely
it's not
slower.
Too much to do it. Yeah, like it's just not. Yeah, but a braid exists. I said.
True.
After refusing to play Grixis because a braid exists.
I mean, but Abrupt Decay, Abrupt Decay is better. It's definitely better at killing Time Vaults than a braid. I can counter a braid.
Yeah.
No, I think it's just the diversity of decks like you're talking about, where decks are able to do they don't really have any key weakness because they're playing 4 colors and 5 colors, and they just have access to all the best tools. And, my question is sort of like, well, what do we do to address that? How do you take away some of those tools for high color decks that incentivize people to go lower in colors without punishing those same low color decks?
I am not.
It's $1 million question.
100% on that. That's that is a very good question. I've mentioned. I think I've put forth like in some like kind of offhand conversation, like as like if you want to like point blue piles specifically, like EI is a good point. Special iteration, like it is. I don't think it would ever see play at a point though, which is kind of like a self-fulfilling
sad,
as well.
right?
It's kind of sad, and also like, does blue-red tempo really need to pay a point for EI?
It doesn't, the same but way also
that, like blue.
Rest in
blue,
peace,
black
buddy.
Tempo,
like it's.
Yeah, like need to. Yeah, I don't. There's. Like you can just do more down pointings, which is what the council been doing for about a year and a half, or not a year, maybe for a good chunk of time at least.
Yep.
Like if you really wanted to. Like. Because down pointings will never make a deck worse, like functionally. Like through a meta, it will make a deck worse, but it's not like down pointing is never going to make a deck like actually like
less powerful than it was before,
powerful
right?
On its own in a vacuum,
Yep.
right? And nothing ever is ever a vacuum or whatever, but you get the idea. Like you could just down point Mana Crypt, like you mentioned earlier. Like put Mana Crypt to 4, put Soul Ring to 3, and that will
Boom.
hurt blue decks. But that's not really an interesting answer to the question. I
Yeah,
think there's been some interesting ideas put forth. I kind of lean a little conservative on the points list in terms of like
Totally.
how much changing I think is needed. I do like the points that again Jay Wyatt has put out a couple times, like talking about like reanimate to 1, right? I think reanimate to 1
Right.
is like super elegant. We've been complaining about reanimator a whole bunch. We've been talking about Czech 4-color piles a whole bunch, and both those decks use reanimate to like a certain effect.
Hmm.
And reanimate will get to like be playable in like low color black decks for sure, because the card is absolutely insane. It tags reanimator, and it does take a point out of full color blue without actually like definitively making the deck like punishing the deck in any way.
Right.
Because I don't think punishing decks is interesting either,
That's
right?
certainly true.
Absolutely, like you can like slap a hand, of course, right? So get out of the cookie jar, all right? You're playing Red at 6 and like Frog and
Your blue black mid range deck.
yeah, like Dig Through Time and Treacher Cruise, like for sure. Like tell me to slow it down a little bit, but don't take away like the soul of the decks in any way.
True.
And reanimate doesn't take the soul to reanimator, because reanimator has like 10-point slots to like give up.
That's
Doesn't really care, right?
Yeah.
But for like 4-color pile, take a reanimate to the deck. We don't lose any identity or lose any soul by losing reanimate, right? It's just like a really good card we play,
Totally.
and taking it out of the deck makes the deck a little bit worse, and that's fine. The deck could be a little bit worse.
I think that's kind of where the sweet spot of pointed cards tends to lie, when it's going to see play at a point, it's going to see play in different decks than it was before at a point, and it's going to make the decks that are at the top just a little bit worse. Sometimes you have to target specific decks. Recall to 8 was like that. If Time Vault ever went up to 8, it would be very similar. And sometimes you're just trying to, reduce the amount of decks that are free rolling a card that really just don't have any business doing that over and over and over again.
Absolutely. Actually, yeah. That's exactly where I feel. And that's why I am such a fervent defender of Psychic Frog. I think that card is so cool. I'm sorry. I think that card is
it
really
is cool. I think Psychic Frog is awesome. I also feel like whenever I resolve it, I'm like, damn, this is a pointed card. Like it's very much for me not. This is one of those things I've had discussions with Impulse in the Discord, and it's something to the effect of like, don't take away people's toys, and I totally get that, and I want people to be able to play with their cards. I also think that we need to make it so that people can play with other cards that aren't those cards. And like, if I'm going to a tournament over and over again and stomping with Time Vault, somebody needs to take away some of my toys. I have too many toys. And I feel similarly about, like, yeah, you can have Regavan and Psychic Frog and Minsk and Boo and Ren and 6. But then if you have all of those things, do you really need a recall also? And so it's kind of that like, well, I want you to have all your toys. I want you to be able to play with them. But I want you to have to make some choices about which toys you get to play with today. And some picking and choosing. And I think current decks, especially the decks that we've aforementioned, Reanimator gets every single toy it wants and then some, right? It has all of its toys. Like, you can lose a couple toys, bud. And I think the same is true for Time Vault and 4-color blue.
Yeah, I definitely do want to see more points to it. I think, at least with 4-color blue, I think I'm personally more interested in hitting like support cards.
Yeah.
I think, like, because Psychic Frog, this is my Psychic Frog like defense statement. Like,
please.
It is a card that will absolutely sometimes just ruin a game. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
Sure.
When I'm on the play and I go like turn 1 in position, turn 2 Frog, and I have Daze in hand or something. Like, right. You're not playing Magic. I'm sorry, that was 0 points of a hand. Right. You don't get to play anymore. But we will have different games sometimes. But there are a lot of games where Psychic Frog is very interesting and nuanced, and like there are certainly like games I've lost with Frog in play where if I fed and shoved like 1 or 2 more cards into it, that I could have won, but I wasn't like I wanted to hold those cards, like I want to hold like an extra counter spell just in case instead of just have 1 counter spell, and I lose that game like because of that like ability to predict a game state and keep and play to that game state. Similarly, like I had a game on the weekend where someone lightning bolted my Psychic Frog. I looked at what deck they were playing. I looked at what mana they had available, and I just said, you know what? Frog dies. I didn't discard cards to it. I didn't try and keep it alive. And I think little moments like that are super interesting because that could have been a bluff. I didn't ask after the game like what they had in hand. Like it could have been swords. It could have just been nothing. But like I think Frog does have really interesting games. It will have games where it just sucks, but I think there are really interesting board states where it's asking you to convert a resource that blue decks really care about. We really care about having cards in hand to board presence. And of course, it does refund that card. It does refund those cards in hand, but
slowly. I mean, it does it, but slowly.
Slowly, but it can have like very interesting. It can be an interesting card, like similar to White Plume in the Initiative. I used to be a huge White Plume hater. I absolutely despise the card. That tech killed my version of Jonth, in my opinion. But the card is now at a point where, well, the card is incredibly messed up, and it will just suddenly blow up games that you had like no reason to lose, right? If your opponent goes like
Crypt.
I don't know, Crypt, even just like in some lineups of hands, they just have like Dork, White Plume,
right?
And they suddenly have like, even if you played like a turn one threat, they have two blockers now, right? You not only had to have a turn one threat, you also have to have two blockers, assuming you're on the draw or something, right? And you have to have a threat and or answer, and you have to assume they don't have an answer, and like that is a game that is ruined by White Plume. But there are also games now, and I'd say probably a bit more than half of Initiative games now are genuinely interesting games, and I want to keep those games alive.
I agree.
And I am apologizing for Frog right now. I'm sorry.
I definitely think that the funness of Frog is, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's a card that incentivizes interesting decisions. And cards that incentivize interesting decisions are fun cards to play Magic with.
Yeah, right. Like, and it's not always. Sometimes you like they pass turn and play Frog, and then you're just like, oh, I have Counterspell up now. I'm just gonna like
right,
just hit you for one every turn, and it's not gonna matter if I discard cards or not because I just have 8 Counterspells. But it's fun sometimes. It's fun sometimes.
I mean, but that's the format that we play too, right? Like there is an element of sometimes you just high roll your opponent, you know. So and I remember a game. I was one of the semifinals. I think it was versus Zach at House of Cards, and I was playing against him on Jeskai, and this is before I became the Jeskai killer. And I think my opening turn was land, Mana Vault, Voltaic Key, Lotus Petal, Mox Diamond, 3 mana Teferi.
Yeah.
Something like that. It was I deployed 3 mana Teferi on turn 1.
Yeah.
And the game was over from that point. Like he was kept at hand with 4 counterspells or something, and it was like, cool. Well, you're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
And it's something like that, and it's just like that happens.
Yeah.
We play a format where that happens.
Now there is a card that's never made a game interesting. Teferi. No game has become better because of that card entering play. What a horrible design.
Wait till I introduce you to City of Solitude. Now that card leads to some interesting games.
Ooh. I have Bosejude Breaches through Teferi. I have not had
the luxury of doing that through a City of Solitude.
Yeah.
I know
Reasons,
you haven't. Yeah, I just like casting my spells, and people are always like, "Hey, stop!" And I don't like it when they do that. So I try to prevent people from doing that.
You play too much Commander. You're too tired of like having a 10-minute conversation every time a spell hits the stack. That's
I got all my Stack Wars, got that stuff done, and out of my system when I played CDH. Now it's time for just good old fashioned. Stop talking to me. Let me storm off. I'm busy.
Yeah. Busy goldfishing.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things you mentioned Grave Hate earlier, and I want to chime in a little bit more on that. I don't think the meta has adjusted enough for the amount of Grave Hate, but it's adjusted enough to make a deck like Breach Storm feel a lot worse. I've been playing a lot of that deck recently, and it is definitely both Yogg Storm and Breach Storm. There's the amount of times where my Jund opponent's just like, yeah, I'm gonna play a Keenite Curator. Like,
that card.
That card fucks, dude.
No, that card's
nasty.
That one's not even the meta adjusting. That's just an insane 2-drop beast.
Exactly, exactly. And that's the thing too, is like the incidental graveyard hate is getting stronger and stronger, and as the meta does start to include more and more graveyard hate, it makes those other decks that are more graveyard reliant it just makes them tougher to play, and it makes them weaker. So it's tough on one hand because it's like, well, if we nerf the reanimator decks a little bit, that's going to open up players to play less graveyard hate, which is going to make those other decks stronger, which is, I think, probably a better way to balance Breach Storm than to go Lotus to 6. But maybe that's what's necessary if we live in a world where Keen-Eyed Curators are just the cards that people want to be playing.
Yeah, there's a certain number of graveyard hate cards that are just like absolutely like must jams, and there's like a second tier of like, okay, you have someone in mind when you're sleeping up your deck tonight.
Yep.
Like,
well,
really,
I mean,
the unlicensed hearses of the world, like that card, like that card, absolutely insane. Like that card is so good against blue.
Well, the Soul Guide Lantern entered my deck because of a mutual friend of ours who plays a lot of Reanimator, and like I was tired of it. It's like, dude, stop killing me. That's it. I'm exiling your spells. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, so Soul Guide's a great one. Like the freest graveyard hate pieces I think right now are Cling to Dust, Keen-Eyed Curator, and then like Emperor of Bones.
Oh, Emperor of Bones.
I think are the three like that you kind of, if you're playing a deck that like is similar to that strategy. Like I don't play Emperor in Czech right now.
You could though.
It wouldn't be insane.
Yeah,
like
the card's good.
If I was a bit more board based, I think I would be on it. I know there's another Czech pilot who's on Time Walk right now that's playing it and said it's been nuts. But like those three are like the kind of like easy, like if you're playing those colors in like a similar strategy, you play those graveyard spells, and there's like lower tiers of like I'm on a Saga deck, so I want to be a tutorable graveyard hate piece.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on like a Soul Mana deck, so I want to have unlicensors. I'm on like a stupid garbage proc deck, so I'm going to play Egg the Soul Cauldron. And I'm an idiot, and I'm ugly.
The drive-by shooting, dude. You'll hear from him if he watches this. If he doesn't, you'll be fine. But if he watches, you'll hear from him.
But yeah, the graveyard hate, like there's certainly there's room for more of it. I was playing like Bogart Trawler, I think is an interesting piece right now. I was on it, I'm off it again. But I think that that was a card I put in knowing I was going to play it in Reanimator in your tournament. I was like, in sorcery speed, sure, but if we have a stack war and I counter the Reanimate, like most Reanimator players are like happy with that.
Right.
They're like, okay, well, half the combo is still like quote unquote in play, right? If a Reanimator threat's in the graveyard, that like turns on so many draws. So they're not gonna like fight too hard over it.
Mm-hmm.
So having an untap Trawler you is I think like a very that card's good. That card's actually like,
isn't it 3/1 too? So like it doesn't not like it's a pretty decent clock.
It's a decent clock against, again, like in the match 3 cast it like for the graveyard hate, and then like I've cast it a decent amount of times against aggro. It's just like, all right, well I'll trade my garbage land for your X3, right?
Yeah.
Like the world's worst Liganjo, but like it still does the job.
Yeah, I mean it's still a 3-mana 3/1 that just sort of chills and does nothing else if not be a 3/1.
Yeah.
So zooming out a little bit, we've talked a lot about these sort of big 3 decks that are sitting at the top. Do you think with these decks where they are right now that the meta is healthy?
I don't think it's like unhealthy, but it's like it's out of shape maybe. Like I think some aggro, some crunches in the form of like aggro would be not bad. A couple like morning walks. Stop like smoking less. I don't know, like drinking less.
Right.
Like
hit the gym a couple times, delete Facebook, lawyer up, just normal stuff. Just
there is like
tune the format a little bit.
I don't think it's like terribly I don't think it's really unhealthy. I think there is a good variety of decks. Like in the tournaments, I believe I played against like Goblins, Reanimator. No, I can't remember now. It's been too long. But
2 weeks. The Zoomer brain,
Czech,
it's over.
And like there was like the person on the green black like lands mid range deck was like kind of cool. That was a sweet deck.
Yeah, Abzan
Like there
lands.
was,
That deck did some cool stuff.
yeah, Springheart and Tuco. That card's pretty good.
That card
Uh,
is very good.
uh,
Coming soon to check near you.
yeah, there's room. I think there's still room for people to do what they want to do in the format.
Yeah.
Uh, would I like to see like a little bit more variety? Yes, especially in no proxy events. Obviously, that's not really the goal of the council is to
Yeah.
make non-proxy events viable. But Reanimator having like 5 lists at every no proxy event in,
There's
in the
definitely
Pacific
something
Northwest
to do.
is
Yeah.
is kind of
Entomb is
ridiculous.
so much cheaper than Ancestral Recall. It's crazy.
Yeah, buying, yeah, that's what they should do. They should add Entomb to the reserve list to nerf Reanimator.
I'm down. I have a foil Odyssey Entomb, dude. That card would spike. I'll tell you that.
Absolutely stocks. So no, I don't think the meta is unhealthy right now. I think there's room for improvement, but I don't think like in any way that there needs to be like drastic action taken.
Sure.
I want to see where the strip mine to 1 lands us. I still think like a lot of the aggro players kind of are like they're kind of crossing their arms and kind of pouting. They're like, Barrow Goy still exists. Psychic Frog's not 3 points. Like, when I think if they give it a shot, I think they could have more success. Like, I've had aggro games recently in the last couple months where like it's been really close. Like the game came down to like one like lucky draw, and like the lucky draw was on my side. But if it was on theirs, like they absolutely just take that game, take that match, whatever. So I do think there is, yeah, I think that there's room for to see where Strip Mine to 1 takes us. I think that again, it's a great change. I think aggro decks will get better from that. But they need to like actually sleeve it up, play those aggro decks and play them consistently to actually grind it out and figure out what they need to do instead of, getting a bit in like a spiral about
Sure.
the cards that have been printed, right? Like with me and Jund, like I tilted off that entire deck. I don't think I'll ever play Jund again. But like someone else took Jund and changed Jund and made it like Jund like his thing,
Right.
and like has a bunch of success with it because he like had a vision for the deck and what it could do, and made that vision come true. And I think that's cool and good, right? Like if anyone asks,
It's a beautiful world.
like where Jund is now, like anyone in the server, like a new person in the server comes, is like, oh hey, I want to trade Jund and cast Bloodbraid Elf. People are like, don't cast Bloodbraid Elf. But, well, you're not casting that card.
Yeah,
Go
cast
talk to
Underground
Protash.
Adventure.
Take
Cast
deck. Yeah. I think there's some room for that with Gruul Monsters. I think Gruul Monsters actually, like, Parrot Robar has done a good job adding Graveyard Hate to the deck in a way that, like, does, like, do a really good job of evening out the matchup. But I think he's kind of just, like, on to other decks right now and hasn't played it. But I think if he... Like, if someone picked that deck, his list right now, and played it for, like, 2 or 3 weeks, they could put up good numbers.
I like how we've gone this entire time without talking about 4-color aggro.
Oh.
Zoe Erasure. Not a real... I don't think she's won anything, last I checked.
4-color aggro, it's great. It's like, what if... I don't know. What if Channel Mirror was an aggro deck?
Right. It's just all of the high roll, full send on the mugs.
Like what I said to her recently, like, you'll keep a 7, and then you'll pass after turn 1 with, like, 3 cards in hand.
Right.
Like,
Pitch Spirit Guide, White Bloom Adventure. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah. That deck is sweet. Like, she's like, she definitely built a deck that, like, abuses the mulligan rule and knows how to abuse that rule, like, super well. And also, like, that deck can grind sometimes. I've played, like, long games against that deck where, like, after my version of it where their hands empty on turn 3 all the time, like, that deck lasts. It has staying power.
Well, when all of your draws are 2 and 3 mana broken threats, like, you just can always play them, and if they have activated abilities, you can always activate them, and it just sort of goes from there.
Yeah, and you're playing 25 lands or something.
No way. No way that deck's on 25 lands. That's crazy. I'm on 29 in a deck that plans to put Bolus's Citadel into play. Like, that's... and that deck hates lands, let me tell you.
But imagine if I wasn't lying. Would that be different?
All right, Zoe. That's your challenge from this episode. Is you have to brew 4-color blood with 25 lands and
25
make it a
lands.
viable deck.
And still play Mox Diamond.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you don't. I mean, that's fast
We
mana.
wouldn't even need to tell her that. Yeah, that
That's,
would already be
great.
in there. First card in the list.
Yeah, start with Mox Diamond,
Yeah.
and then you can go from there.
Yeah, Mox is the 25th land.
It's exactly.
20
If you add a Mox Diamond, you can cut a land. That's a direct, just true statement. You can do that 100% of the time in any deck, and there's no consequences.
I tried playing Mox Diamond in like blue decks with Loam, and it wasn't good. I wanted it to be good.
I mean, Loam is sweet. I think that's a card that I was talking with somebody yesterday or on Monday about Loam in 4-color blue decks. Just picking up fetch lands, just like doing a red and 6 impression. Especially now with Strip at 1, I think we're going to see a lot more Loams in the world.
I think so, and that's good. Loam is like one of the coolest cards of all time.
Loam is fun magic.
It's a fun it's like a 1-card engine that doesn't feel broken.
Yeah, I
Like,
definitely agree.
It's an engine that fuels itself, but also doesn't like.
Yeah, you have to
It never
sacrifice a
feels
draw to
too
pick
bad.
it up. It's not you have to pay mana for it every turn. It's not just picking up things for free like Ren and 6 does. Like, no,
Yeah.
I think it's a good card. It's a fun and it's a card that allows you to play like fair intuition piles, which are also also fun magic.
There you go. Speaking like a Sultai gamer, like
Exactly.
Uro, Loam Uro Saga, and just watch your blue opponent just like the color drain out of their face.
Right. Like, how do you beat that? How do you beat that? Counterspell. But other than counterspell, how do you beat that? So we've talked a lot about some of these new point changes. We've talked about sort of where the meta is at. If you were in charge of the points list and you had to make 3 changes tomorrow, which 3 changes would you make?
I think the 3 I would make. Easy answer. Reanimate to 1. I think Entomb is a more messed up card. It targets Reanimator more, but also I think that Fair Black could pay a point for Reanimate. Now they've had like 1 year of being actually playable after Bowmasters was released. And like Entomb, like if someone wants to play like shunned lands with Entomb, like by God, let them do that. That sounds so innocent and pure. So don't take that from them. And then I'm gonna double this one up, and these are like all from JY's list. Like I think he's really sold me on these ones.
Yeah.
Like the delve spells both going to 2 together.
Mm-hmm.
Right now they've sold. I think someone sold me on. I think it was Impulse maybe sold me on Dig over Cruise in my list currently, and I've been liking that. And so like, although I think Cruise is pound for pound the better card, at 1 point, like for most decks, just putting Cruise to 2 and leaving Dig at 1. Like Cruise would just never see play, and I would just play Dig all the time.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Those 2 cards are very much tied. Same with Moxen. It's very hard to justify one Mox moving at a place that
What
the
if
other
Sapphire
don't.
was 2? Merfolk needed the help. It's like, shut up. Like, what's wrong with you? And then probably Saga would be my 3rd one.
Yeah.
And I think those do. I think those all like do a pretty good job of like nerfing like the 3 best decks, like Reanimator, Artifact combo, and Blue. Like Blue gets 2 out of there. Reanimator kind of gets 3 points depending. They'd happily drop one of the delves. I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah. They've got the points for it. They'll be all right.
And then like Saga is a card people have been complaining about forever. People like argue like, oh, it's fine, like it's a good card because it's it punishes blue decks, which it does, and that's a fair argument to keep it low. But I think to a certain extent, and this is less true now in 2024, but this might be like kind of a soft buff to aggro as well, putting Saga to
Yeah,
to
definitely.
1.
I mean, I
Both
definitely
that
think so.
Decks that don't play it will stop playing it, and that people will be less scared of like Fair Saga into Shadowspear.
Mm-hmm.
Which like Shadowspear is not the card it was even a year ago.
Yeah, definitely.
And the card was never like OP or whatever. Like not even close. The card is very, very fair.
Yeah.
But there's definitely been like a good chunk of games won against aggro, but just I don't like more out of like the mid range, like the top heavier mid range decks. I know Crotash has been on and off it in Jund, I believe, but just like losing games to like okay they had the Saga, they're getting the Shadow Spear, and I can't bolt their Sentinel to Nameless City, so I'm gonna lose the game now. So I think that's also kind of nice.
Yeah, I also
Softly.
think it's such a artifact mid-range plan unto itself that artifact decks that want to mid-range at all are going to pay a point for it. And in those
Yeah.
decks, it does a point worth of work. It absolutely is sitting there and creating a plan that just gets in the way of so many other plans for so cheap and so efficiently and so synergistic with the plan too. Like if it just made constructs and didn't tutor, that'd be one thing. If it just tutored and didn't make constructs, that'd be one thing. But it does
Yeah.
both. It doesn't need to, and it taps for mana. It doesn't even have like a.
Yeah, there's no fail case for it.
Yeah, it just. Other than it being removable as an enchantment, that's the and then even that.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. If they print like 4 more marches,
right. Yeah.
Like-
Exactly.
then I'll stop complaining about Saga.
Yeah.
But until then, that card can eat dirt. That card.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think Saga is a little bit overdue, but I am sure it is right around the corner. I think with the council being willing to take a good look at blue and point stuff in blue's direction and 4-color blue's direction, their main reason, the only real reason that I know of that they're holding out on Saga is because they don't want to make blue too good. And if they're willing to point blue, then that excuse goes away and Saga goes to 1. It's
Yeah.
about time.
And like I want to lose. I want to. There's plenty of cards on my maybe board that I want to play. I've been eyeing up Siphon Insight for a while.
I don't even know what that does.
Oh, it's great. If you love casting Sauron's Ransom on webcam, you'll love casting Siphon Insight. It's
Oh,
a blue and a
please
black
tell me.
instant. You exile the top 2 cards of your opponent's library. One you keep face down. You can cast it. Cast it like an op agent. You can just cast it any color. Other one goes in the bottom, and then it has flashback for 1 blue black.
Wow.
So sick. Cards. That is like.
That's very sick.
I think when Reanimate got brought up, I was like, oh, I want to just play Siphon instead of Reanimate. Because the card,
If
the card is
you-
like, it's like, why not just play Think Twice? It's like, no, this is Think Twice with like some card selection. And also, more importantly, I refuse to pay Thought Scour. That card is garbage. But it also messes with your opponent's top deck tutors.
True.
So like, just like Siphon Insight, like it's kind of cute. It's a cute little card. And also awful to resolve from webcam, which makes it perfect for me.
I was gonna say if you resolve that spell in one of my tournaments, we're gonna exile the spell from the stack and you can draw a card, but you don't get your mana back. We're just we're moving on with our day, bro. That's not. I can deal with Praetor Scrap.
Curve. Let's go. Let's go.
Just min-maxing cards that are just absolute nightmares to resolve.
Yeah. That card's sweet. Apparently, someone brought it to the Vancouver weekly in Czech.
Oh, yeah?
In a checklist and played it, and it was pretty good.
Nice.
Which is cool. That card, it's a sweet card. Like everyone pretends we're all good at Magic, but all we want to do is steal our opponent's cards, like we're playing like awful. We're playing like Bribery and like old.
I was about to say, when are you gonna put
Yeah, like-
Bribery in check? That card's really good versus Reanimator. Let me tell you, wins the game on the spot. Such a cool Atraxa you have, anyways. Yoink.
into play.
All right, Mr. Prawn. Well, as we start to wind down, as all the giggles and the goofies and the ha-has start to wind to a close, what's next for you? You gonna just keep grinding check, keep winning dual lands? Is that the path forward?
That's the hope. I'm pretty proud of my most recent run. Thank you to Psychic Frog, which is an unpointable card.
Unpointable.
Unpointable.
0 forever.
Absolutely. People who say it's worth a point are crazy. They're talking under the court.
Of course.
No, I want to keep playing more Magic. I'm enjoying the kind of where I've taken check now. Like it's barely check. It's just Grixis Green, like splashing just like
Sure.
the most gross cards. It's not like, throwing Tarmogoyf and Uro into the pile. I'm off for even right now, and I'm enjoying like the really, really, really light splash. I might try other 4-color piles, 3-color piles at some point. Like, straight Grixis like does appeal to me. Like that does, but just like the idea of like the non-creature permanent removal being so miserable just keeps turning me away. So Esper actually is something I've been thinking about.
I was gonna say Esper or even Grixis White as a
Yeah.
getting access to that good removal again.
Yeah. The problem with playing the 4-color no green decks is you lose your main color always, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
But then if black is your splash, hand attack is awkward because you don't want to get black mana early. If white and red are your splashes, then like you don't want the red or the white early for the red and white removal. So it's like you have to be very disciplined. I think like Esper red, when red is like you're only playing like 2 red removal pieces, Expressive Iteration, Aragorn, and like maybe Dreadhorde or something. I think that's probably like the play. But like you don't want to be on like Flame Slash, especially if you're like playing Dismember and Snuff Out and Path and Swords.
Right.
And, that deck, the person who cracks like the best way to build that color combination is going to have like a couple months of like winning tournaments. I think, like when they figure out like what's the exact way to like split these colors.
Those 4 the Sandscreen colors.
Yeah.
So you heard it here first.
Yeah, that person's gonna have fun. I think Raikkoon on the Discord's been like playing with Grixis White or Jeskai Black. I don't know.
Or Esper Red. Who knows?
Or Esper Red. Yeah. What are the 3?
Mardu Blue. Same. Like I don't know.
Yeah. And they're all like 7 card differences, but like
right.
The differences are like that is genuinely like a difficult. That's like the tinker and me going like, what is the best one? I don't know.
Well, I won't be the one cracking it, so I wish you all the best in making that happen. Are there any closing thoughts? Anything you want to sign off with before we wrap up show?
No. Play in his next event, please. Please play.
Please show up, guys. Come on.
Please, like it is so cool. Like I think it's so healthy for people, especially like the Discord regulars, to like play in a meta with prizing on the line.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think another reason that like the meta is kind of stagnant is because there's not much. We have like a year-end tournament, but there's not much true like money on the line incentive week by week to innovate, to bring something new besides ego. And like we already have an ego, we don't need additional help doing that. Like, so
the ego's
come to these
doing
events.
well and alive.
They're so fun. It's playing Magic for good prizes is like one of my favorite things to be doing. Like it's so satisfying. Everyone is smart. There's a good camaraderie. I truly love playing competitive Magic. It's the best, and I really appreciate you putting the event on.
Well, thank you very much. As reigning champion, of course, I expect you will come and defend your title. I think you're one of. I think it's only you and Crayon who top 8'd both JK1 and JK2. So we'll see if you can keep your top 8 streak going alive. But it's a narrow band of people who've made the top every time. We'll see if we can keep that going.
I hope so.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come and join. For all of our listeners, thanks for sitting through and hearing us yabber about our favorite game here. Make sure to show up to Joe King 3, which of course I don't have a date for, but I do have the duel. So there will be another plateau on the line for the Joe King Open number 3. And thanks for listening, and have a good night.